PowerPlayChess, brought to you in association with Kagi. I'd like to show you another Sicilian Kalashnikov game sent in by a viewer of the channel. So this game highlights some of the positional aspects of the Kalashnikov. So let's get the opening up on the board. There we go, and this move e5. So the Kalashnikov is a dynamic opening, but there is a sound strategic basis to it. And this game features two themes that I highlight in the course: the breakout bishop and the minority attack. So look out for those. So this was sent in by Mark Cook. He says, I'm a 60-something 1900 player. In fact, he sent me two games. Both feature one of the main lines of the Kalashnikov. Both were slow play online games, and this is really slow, with a maximum of 3 days per move. Wow, that could take a really long time, but presumably some of these moves came a lot quicker as well. So, here we go. The knight is attacked, and as I mentioned before, there are lots of options here, but really only one move tests black, and that's knight b5. Now d6, so that is the start of the Kalashnikov. And white plays one of the main lines, knight c3. So at this point we push the knight back, so this knight has to get back into the game. So bishop e7, this is the move that I recommend in my Chessable course, and there's the book as well. So knight c4, the knight spins back into the game and does arrive at this very nice square e3, which looks at these two outposts on f5 and d5, but it's taken time. So white has yet to think about castling on the king side. So, well, we've seen bishop d3 played in a recent video. This time white plays g3. So this is the most popular move in this position. So it's quite logical. The bishop comes to g2, which supports the e-pawn, and white prepares to castle. So in my course, I recommend two moves in this position. There's h5, which is great fun. That's, leads to slightly unusual positions and is very aggressive, challenges white straight away. Or there's castles, which I give as a kind of solid option if h5 isn't quite to your taste. In fact, Mark sent me two games, one featuring h5 and one featuring castles. So just very quickly, he played h5 in one game, and the game, well, went bishop g2. Here white has a dilemma. You can block the pawn with either h3 or h4, but if you play h3, then there's always the chance that black is going to play like this and then exploit these weak squares. And if you play h4, then black can often use g4. So most people just play bishop g2, but this is risky actually. Mark finally won this game. I mean, there are a lot of ups and downs in this game. Well, okay, I don't want to go through it in detail. I'd rather concentrate on the other game. But yeah, I mean, this kind of position, I think black is doing already pretty well. Just queen d7 and sometimes even just bishop h3 to attack the king. But okay, that's another story. But it is quite sharp, and white does have interesting options as well. So castles is the move. Is a solid move, and I give that in the course as a second string basically for black. And yeah, this is much more positional. So bishop g2 and b4 straight away. So this is the start of the minority attack. So these two pawns are going to press these three pawns, and actually finally we can see this wins the day for black. So why go for it straight away like this? Well, we want to play bishop g5. So this is what I call the breakout bishop, and is such a common idea, such a common maneuver in the Kalashnikov. the bishop isn't doing much on e7, blocked in by the pawn. But it moves out to g5, and exchanging those bishops is actually really desirable for black. It's good to get rid of the bad bishop, but also it means that later on that knight might occupy the d4 square. We've seen that quite a lot, this Trojan horse. So once that bishop is knocked out of the way, then it's easier for black to operate on these dark squares. It's probably best for white to exchange, actually, because the queen is slightly offside on g5. You can see there are no real attacking prospects when white is set up so solidly on the king side. So basically that queen is going to have to redeploy. Rook b8. Well, that's an important move to support this pawn and rules out any nasty stuff with knight b6 or knight c7 as well. So queen d3, yeah, good move, connecting the rooks. And a5. So black is continuing this minority attack on the queen side. So this is a multi-purpose move. You know, it supports this pawn and also takes away that pawn from a6. So it means that black can now play bishop e6, and that's a really important square for the bishop. Covering d5, looking in all directions actually. That's where the bishop belongs, usually in this opening. So in the course, I give c3 as the main move, and then the queen should bounce back to d8, and then bishop e6. I mean, this is a pretty standard Kalashnikov type position. We want to exchange here, and if knight takes, then that means that this knight will be able to hop into d4. And if pawn takes, well, the minority attack has already had an effect. We've managed to isolate one of the pawns. We've got the rook on the open file. Sometimes you can play a4, and that might allow the queen to a5, might push on again. I mean, this is a very pleasant position for black, I think. I mean, it's about equal, of course. But when the queen is on g5, very few players can resist advancing with f4, this attacking move. Gaining time against the queen as well. But actually, this is so often white's downfall because it exposes the king. This diagonal is often a problem for white. Okay, so the queen moves back. I don't like exchanging because it means that that queen can now swing across to g3. So, you know, something like this, rook d1, it's a nice solid move, more pressure here. But that queen can move to g3. I think it's a really good square. And yeah, I don't like it that this pawn has gone. Black has less influence in the centre. Whereas if you just move the queen back, you know, there is always this possibility to perhaps leap into d4 supported by the pawn. And if pawn takes, then that knight hits e5. I mean, this is now strategically wonderful for black. That knight is so beautiful on e5. This knight will be exchanged off, and strategically black is better in that position. This is just a good knight against a bad bishop. Wonderful position. That's a weak pawn, c2. So having played f4, well, what do you do with that pawn? You don't want to take, so you push on. And there are possibilities to attack with f6. Now, I really like Mark's next move. I think in this situation, this combination of pawn and knight is potentially dangerous. So I think this next move is excellent. Knight e7, exchanging off this. It's a very powerful piece on d5. And if f6, well, actually that's really no bother for black. You exchange. It feels like, you know, the king is a little bit insecure, but actually without a knight, it's impossible to exploit the fact that the king is a little bit exposed. So for example, after this, check. There we go. That's a useful tempo. Bishop e6, that's where the bishop belongs in this line. Queen d2, okay, got to watch out for a check, no problem. h6. Actually, you know, all these squares are covered. And black's king is perfectly safe here, but what is more relevant is not this king position, but actually this weak pawn. and black is about to take over the initiative here and pile up on the c-pawn. And strategically, I think black is doing pretty well in that position, actually. And you can see how that pawn on e5 carves out territory for black in the centre. Gives that bishop some nice cover, which in turn covers this pawn and looks down here and across here. So positionally, it's very nice. You see these pieces complement each other. The bishop controls the light squares and these pawns protect the dark squares. Okay, back we go. So after knight e7, white decided to exchange on e7 and went f6 anyway, offering a pawn to break up black's king position. But it's not terribly good. I mean, you could play rook f2. I mean, at some point this pawn is going to have to be protected. But then, okay, we can swing the queen across. And moves like rook b6 come into play with the idea bishop a6 and rook c6. And you can see how that rook on b6 is actually wonderful. Protects the d pawn, can move to c6. Once the bishop comes to a6, okay, I hope you can imagine this. Then, so black is tripling on the c file. The d pawn is protected. The bishop is strong on a6. It's actually, you know, things can turn very quickly in black's favour here. And that bishop could end up just being not a very good piece. In any case, white decided to play f6. But this is really no bother for black at all. Rook d1. Hitting this one. Now, there is no need to defend that pawn. Bishop e6. Excellent move. And here I think white should play rook f2. And then rook c8. But, I mean, I think black is already better here. Yeah, watch out for this. And a nice skewer. But white decided to take the pawn on d6. And because black has these two pawns cramping these three pawns, that's a classic minority attack, and you see this all the time in the Sicilian. Black is actually winning this. It's not, I wouldn't even just say black is better, black is winning. This next move is very nice. Let's get rid of that rook. And then we can concentrate on these pawns. So if that rook tries to run away from exchange, well, that wins material. If rook c6, okay, we're going to exchange. And that's winning for black. Two pawns are attacked. So white tried rook d1. Doesn't make any difference. An exchange and rook c8. And white is utterly lost. Again, we see, you know, these two pawns squeezing these three. This is attacked. And this is attacked. And there's no way back for white. And particularly as the king is so far away and that bishop is hopeless, blocked in behind its pawn. So rook d2. This was played. Bishop takes a2. And this a pawn is absolutely deadly. Of course, if b3, then the bishop just bounces to b1 and the c pawn drops. c3 played, an exchange, and bishop b3. Very nice. Just going to support this pawn running through. Rook d6. So the rook comes behind the pawn, but that's no problem. Rook takes c3. There we go. The rook performs its primary function in the Sicilian to hammer down the c file and take the c pawn. King g7. There's a very calm move. And now black gets on with the task of pushing that pawn. So now this is threatened. And bishop b3. I guess this is possible, but actually there's no need to go in for this. Yeah, that pawn. Okay, yeah, I mean this is winning as well. You can play bishop c4. And in that way hold the pawn, so that's winning too. But I mean the move played bishop b3 is much better. You want to keep this nice active rook, and bishop c4 check threatened. In fact, white blundered with bishop g4, and so that was the final move of the game, because bishop c4 is just winning immediately because king here. check, and then you take the rook. But there really is nothing in this position for white. I mean, bishop c4 check threatened. If king f2, then simply a2, and rook c1 and a1. And final one, if rook takes pawn, then bishop c4 check, and rook takes rook. So yeah, completely winning. So yeah, I like this game because it really does highlight the strength of this minority attack, and how if white really doesn't seize the initiative in the right way, and simplifications happen, then black just ends up with a strategically winning position. I mean, I think this is just tremendous for black now, because white is just really constricted on the queen side, and black's king is safe. That's important. So there you go. If you're interested in finding out more about the Kalashnikov, then my book is available from New in Chess, so you can buy that directly from the publisher. And also you can buy the online course from Chessable as well. Again, I'll put the link in the comments and in the video description. So, and of course, if you've played a nice game with the Kalashnikov, do send it in to me. You can reach me via my website, www.danielking.biz. Thanks for watching.